So let's take a look at what we have already. If I hit Control and G here, you can see we registered a left mouse button click. We have that script attached to our camera. And we also have an input binding of mouse binding. And if you remember last time we created a mouse binding and the event that we essentially created, the first one was LMB. So if I open this up, you can see that this is essentially what it was. Like when we use our input handler to press the left mouse button, it just prints it to the screen. Let's actually think about a way that we can maybe make a little game board. Like one of my favorite games growing up was like Marble Madness, and it was based on a very simple board game where you have a marble and sort of a board, a wood board that was created, and the marble starts off in a corner and you rotate it a little bit to get the marble into a key area to make a point. So I think that would be kind of a cool way to teach you about physics and a little bit more about the whiteboard. So if you remember, we created this also in one of the original ones, which is just this white box. And I'm going to move this back just a little bit. I'm going to hit Z to zoom in. And with this object, you can see my center point is in this center here. So I'm going to make this essentially a cube, or I'm sorry, more of a plane. But notice when I scale this in, it scales uniformly. And the reason for that is because they want you to edit the white box essentially like this. So you come out a few degrees in this way, a little bit more in that, and try to keep it even by using the grid. The reason why I'm saying that is because once you leave, notice that your pivot point is affected by how much you move these things. So you just want to be conscious of that. So I'm going to move this down a little, and then I'm going to move this up like that, and pull these sides out just a little bit. Now, what I ordinarily would do is just make this in Blender or Maya, but what's nice about using this white box system essentially is that you can actually export this out as an OBJ out to your scene and use it as an actual white box, or you maybe are familiar with the term gray box, and so you can use that as a gray box or white box to size your scene. So let's add another component here. I'm going to name this game board actually, and let's go ahead and create another entity, and I'm just going to call this marble. And the marble itself needs a few components. So I'm going to place my marble in the center of my board like this. And we're going to add a couple things to this. We're going to add a component, which is the mesh component. And I have inside of mine, I'm using the starter game assets, a few mesh components. So here is a primitive cube. What I'm looking for is the primitive sphere, which is down here in these objects default. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. The next thing I need is some sort of rigid body to make this fall. Now you're going to notice one issue when I press play. So I'm going to do the physics rigid body. When I press play on this or hit Control G, notice that it falls through. And the reason for that is we need a collision object. So I'm going to go here and I'm just going to type COLL for collider, and I want the physics collider. Now, you're not seeing it, even though we have simulated on in scene, and you want to make sure these are on as well to show those elements. And the reason for that is because our collider is too small. Like, see how it says edit collider done? So if we actually, what we need is, see where it says shape here? We would need to switch that to a sphere. And you might still be like, well, we're still not seeing it. And that's because we just need to set it to 100%, which is the shape of our sphere. Now what I can do is go in and scale this down. And when I hit Control G, you can see it has collision. But you're like, well, what about this guy? Why is it still going through this? We added our collision. We added our rigid body, which gives it physics. Well, we also need to, remember we're using a white box here, add a collider to this. So I'm just going to type white box, and what we want is a white box collider. And what's cool about this is it'll actually take the shape of the collider as we're editing it. So now when I press Control G, it should just fall on the board. Pretty cool. Now, something else that, let's scale this up a little bit more like that. Something else that would be kind of cool is in our marble game, say we wanted to move our board around and and like with our using our WASD keys, and like I said, to sort of traverse a maze. So we'll take a look at that in the next video.